Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make rave techno like mall grab. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything from this video is available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available, and yeah, let's dive in. So this is the loop that you heard in the intro. We're at 137 BPM. First sound we have here is this first lead, which sounds like this. So here's the MIDI for this one. You can see it's just playing this pretty simple pattern in G minor. Like, that's the key we're in, and if you look at this, these are all just notes that are in G minor. You know, we have like G, the root note, A sharp, the minor third, C, D, the fifth, and then D sharp, which is just one note up from the fifth. So it's pretty simple notes, and then the key is just like using really simple scales like this to kind of make it, you know, deep and emotional. But yeah, and then the other thing with this one is you can see the pattern changes the second time through. This note is up here. It's actually the same note that's playing in the same place the first time. Like, it's just the D sharp, you can see. But it's just an octave up, so it gives you a different feel, because the first time you go, but then the second time it's like, and it's completely different notes, or it's completely the same note, but it sounds like completely different notes. So yeah, and then for the sound with this one, it's made with analog. So this is a pulse wave here. You can see we've got the square wave, and then I've got the pulse width up. I've got an LFO on the pulse width as well, and then a saw wave, and then they're detuned a little bit. The saw wave is an octave down. I'll also talk about the pulse wave a little bit. I noticed he uses a lot of these in his tracks. They sound really good for this kind of like more old school sound. Like if you're trying to channel an old school sort of sound, try using a pulse wave with some LFO on the pulse width, because it gives you that really cool kind of like string-esque sound. And yeah, then we just have the amp envelope like this. I've got a pretty long release. We have some vibrato, which is actually not really doing much, and then this unison, and then after that we just have a bit of chorus, spreading the sound out a bit. There's without it, and then with it you can hear it also makes the sound just a lot bigger. Then we have this reverb, which you can see is giving it a lot of space. I've got a saturator to fatten it up, and this also brings out the reverb a bit. And then finally, I just have a high pass filter, and then a compressor side chaining this to the kick. And you can see it's not being side chained that hard, it's just a little tiny bit to where you don't even really notice it. You know, it just kind of helps to keep it under control and kind of cleaner in the mix, because we're still getting that kick just punching through everything. And yeah, after that we have the second lead, which sounds like this. So this one is kind of operating with the same principle as the last one. Excuse me. You can see it's just a pretty simple pattern in G minor, you know, not a whole lot of notes. It's only 5 notes total here, you can see. And yeah, the thing I'll talk about with this one is the way this pattern goes like this, where it goes doom doom. If you want to make a catchy melody, this is kind of how you do it. Is you have to have some kind of little motif like this jumping from D sharp to D, and then you repeat that in the opposite order. So you go like do 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 do. It's a lot catchier than if it was like, say we did like that. You know, that's a little bit harder to remember, but if you use the same notes and just change the order, it keeps it really simple, so it's a lot easier to hum along, and it makes the melody really catchy. And then I changed it a little bit here, but that's also to make it resolve, because you can see it kind of walks up the scale, it goes. And then when we land back on that G for the first note, it feels like really, you know, it resolves perfectly there. And yeah, for the sound with this one, this is made using analog. So this one is 2 pulse waves. You can see I've got the square wave, and then on both of these, I've got the pulse width turned up, and we also have the LFO on them. So you can kind of hear that movement happening. Again, this is a really good way to create this kind of like more old school sound. And also, you're just creating a more like alive sound too, because you're having this movement sort of happening under the surface. To where people may not even notice it's happening, but the sound is constantly changing and evolving. And another thing I'll talk about here that's kind of cool, this is why I like using analog, is because it's got the two different LFOs, so you can route them differently. And you can see I have these at two really different speeds. The first one's going fast, the first one's going slow. So that's adding a lot of movement in and of itself, just the fact that these two are being modulated at different speeds. I have those oscillators going into a low pass, which you can see has this envelope on it. That's how we get that kind of tight pluck. Then I've got the amp envelope set like this. With actually a little bit of attack, it's not a whole lot. It just kind of makes it go like I'll turn off the filter so you can hear it a little bit more. You know, it's still pretty like sharp. It's not like fading in by any means, but it just kind of gives it a little like at the start rather than just having it be like, you know, right with the sustain and decay there. And then after that, I've just got a bit of vibrato. You can see we actually have quite a bit. Just without it. And with it, so again, just giving the sound some movement. We've got a bit of unison as well. Then we have a bit of chorus, which spreads the sound out a bit. Here's without that. And then with it, so you can hear why the chorus is important. After that, I have this echo, which you can see is on the ping pong setting. So we've got dotted eighth notes, and then the ping pong setting makes it so it's going back and forth. This really helps to kind of give the leads some width. Because the way, like the issue with a lot of techno is you want your sound to have a lot of width, but at the same time, most club systems are in mono, and techno is really made for the club, so you still have to make it work in mono. So this works really well for that because it gives you the stereo width that you'll hear when you are listening in stereo. Like right now I'm listening on headphones, you're probably listening in stereo at home, but then if you took this in the club and put it in mono, it would still be the same sound. It's just these delays would be in the center instead of being like spread out like this. So yeah, it's a good way to add stereo width without making it like, you know, while still keeping it mono compatible. And yeah, then I just have a bit of reverb, giving it even more space. Then we have this drum bus fattening the sound up. Here's without it. And with it. You can hear why we did this. It really makes a huge difference. And then finally, I just have a compressor side chaining this a little to the kick. Again, this is just like with that first lead. You barely hear it, but it just makes it fit into the mix a little bit more. After that, we have the kick, which sounds like this. And yeah, this kick's pretty simple. You know, you just want this kind of like really fat 909-esque hard-hitting kick like this. Which, if you want this one, link is in the description. But yeah, so I've just got that in here. You can see, really not a whole lot going on. I played around with the pitch envelope a little bit, but it really doesn't need it. And then just have a bit of saturation. So here's without that. And then with it. So yeah, just giving it that extra little bit of oomph. Like I was saying in yesterday's video, guys, like, even if you have a fat kick like this, you don't want it to just be dry. You still need some kind of processing on it to just give it that extra little bit of, like, fatness that you may not always be able to notice. Like, if you're not listening to a reference track, or if you're not trying to make your track hit the hardest. But again, it does make a big difference. And yeah, the other thing with this one are these little, like, doom doom. You know, just inserting those here and there really definitely gives it that like old school rave kind of feel. A lot of people do that now. After that, we have the bass line, which sounds like this. So pretty simple. You can see we just got this like this kind of like sequence pattern. That's probably the biggest thing, is just creating a pattern like that that's like catchy. Because this has a lot of groove to it with this pattern. And then in terms of the notes, you know, it's all just pretty simple stuff in G minor, just kind of like, you know, going G, down 7 notes to C, down to D sharp, which would be the relative major of G. Because you can see if we get D sharp and G, it makes a major chord. And then going up here to another C up here. So this is kind of like with that lead where I was saying, like, where I showed you, like, the second time, it's actually the same note. It's just in a different octave, so it sounds different. Same deal here. This goes down to C the first time, and it goes up to C the second time. It's the same note, but it feels completely different. So, like, yeah, it's a really good way to keep it simple. Because even if people don't notice and it sounds kind of like a different note, subconsciously, it still is the same note. So ultimately, your track is going to be simpler and easier to grasp than if you had like some arbitrary different note there. For the sound with this one, this is made with analogs. So this one is a square wave and a saw wave. It's a good way to get this kind of fat, like pluggy bass. I think a lot of times people try to do it with just a saw. But you can hear that's not quite fat enough on its own. And then when you bring in that square wave, you just fill it out really nicely. And yeah, and then those are going into this low pass here with a bit of an envelope on it. Then we have the amp envelope set like this, and then finally I just have a bit of unison. Just to make it a bit bigger and more full sounding. And yeah, then we have this drum bus, which is fattening it up. Here's without it. And then with it, you can hear the difference there. Then we just have a compressor side chaining it to the kick. This one's a lot heavier than the other ones, but it's more for like mixing purposes than it is to hear the effect of the side chain. You know, this is how you get the kick and the bass to fit together so well. And then finally I just have an EQ just cutting a little bit of space for the punch of the kick. And that's it for the bass. And then the kick and the bass are in a group together just with a little bit of drum bus. Here's without this. And then with it. So you hear why we do this, you know. These on their own, you can hear they don't quite have that like fatness to them. But when you put them through this, what's happening is we have this on the hard setting. So it's actually saturating, and then it's also even doing a little bit of limiting, which may seem bad, but what this is really doing is it's just kind of pushing things together here and making it so the kick and bass are closer together, and so your low end is going to sound a lot better in the track. And yeah, that's it for the low end bus. After that, we've got this 909 hi-hat, which sounds like this. So this one's pretty simple. You know, it's a standard 909 hi-hat. Here's the sample. So the main thing with this one is, like, how do you get from this, like a really standard kind of small 909, to like this big fat type of sound like you hear in a lot of these tracks. And the way that you do this is kind of like there are two things. The first is pitching it down. You can see I have this playing at G sharp. This is the original pitch. So see how when you play it lower, it just gets like fatter just because it's like a deeper sound? So that's the first thing, and then the second thing is saturation. So here's without this drum bus, and then with it. You can see this gives it that like hit to the sound, so that it'll really like, you know, be strong in the mix. So yeah, you need some kind of saturation like this. I like drum bus because you can also turn down this damp knob. That helps too, because like that brightness, it's just going to take away from the sound, but if you turn that damp down a little, you can make it a bit darker and more like mid-rangey, which is what you want with this sound. And then the last layer here is this little noise percussion, which sounds like this. So this one's just going, you can see I've got like every first note, every eighth note basically, is a little bit quieter with the velocity. And then I've gone in here, you can see I've just set this connection A, velocity to volume, turn up the amount. And there you go, you can have the velocities a little bit different. So it's not just over top of everything, but it can be a little bit more nuanced. But yeah, the way this sound is made is really simple. All it is it's just some white noise. Really just that. And then I've got it going into a bandpass, which has the shaper and this envelope. So that's how we're getting the more percussive sound out of it. This is something I heard a lot on Mulgrab's like most recent EP. And it's a good way to kind of add some creative percussion in the background. You know, because it fits really well into this mix. We have a lot of high-end stuff, so this like kind of lower mid-range fits perfectly into the mix. And yeah, and then on the bandpass, I have just a little bit of an LFO just to kind of make it move around a bit. You can have like gives a little bit of subtle movement. And then finally, I just have a bit of drum bus on there. There's without it. And with it, you can hear just gives it that last little bit of like fullness to make it sound like some percussion and not just like a synth. And yeah, so that is it for the noise percussion, and that is also going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI presets, all of that stuff from this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. It's a great way to support me if you guys are enjoying these videos. Like I said, link in the top of the description. Yeah, thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.